What are you good at? What do you love? And then how do you identify and where do you find belonging? And that you kind of got to place yourself at the center of that. And it doesn't need to be your career, your volunteer, your social circle. You just need to feel grounded there. That stuck with me of instead of asking myself, what is my passion in life? Which feels like too big of a question a lot of the times. Just what do I like? What am I good at? And then where do I find belonging?
Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. Here on the podcast, I share my experiences raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 16 to 26 and working with thousands more as a summer camp director over the past 3 decades. I'm the author of Happy Campers, and I frequently do workshops with parents, teachers, and summer camp professionals about social skills, connection, and happiness, topics I researched extensively for my master's in psychology. If you want tools for raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults, you've come to the right place. Hey, Sunshine Parenting listeners, and welcome to episode 170, which is first being released on Friday, April 9th, 2021. I know you'll really enjoy this week's episode. I'm talking with 23-year-old Emma Liberman about the important task that she and her peers are going through right now, which we now call adulting. One of my favorite things about having this podcast and being in the speaking and writing world of the parenting sphere is that I often have the opportunity to get advanced copies of upcoming books. I was thrilled to receive an advanced copy of Julie Lythcott-Haims' new book, Your Turn: How to Be an Adult, back in January. And I'm thrilled that Julie will be on the podcast in a few weeks talking about her book. But I also asked a young adult, Emma, to read the book and give me her perspective on Your Turn. This week, I'm sharing my conversation with Emma, and I know you'll learn a lot, and it will definitely make you want to head out and pick up a copy of Your Turn, whether for yourself or for the young adults in your life. Enjoy this episode. Hey, Emma, welcome to Sunshine Parenting.
Thank you. Good morning. It's fun to be a guest on this.
I feel like many years ago we recorded something. I don't think we ever released it, but yeah, wait. Yeah, I haven't had you talking to me about anything in the past, have I? Like on the podcast?
I remember that though. It was when we were traveling, when we were on that spring break trip, senior year. But yes.
Yeah. So Emma, I have known you for a long time. You're kind of like one of my bonus daughters because you're such a good friend of Charlotte's. So I guess I met you when you were like 10 or 12 or something. How old were you when I first met you as a camper?
I think 10 or 11 as a camper.
Okay.
I think it was right at that beginning of middle school age.
Yeah.
And then through high school, and now I'm finishing up college.
I know. Well, why don't you tell people a little bit about like where you are and what you're doing right now?
So I'm finishing up my degree at UC Davis, where I'm studying agriculture and food systems. And then the next step is law school in the fall. And I'm actually heading out to St. Louis tomorrow morning for a little tour of one law school. So it's kind of crazy. And so the Your Turn adult book was, it felt like a good time to read it because of just transitioning to full adulthood, and choosing kind of a career track or a post-undergrad life on my own dime. It was kind of for sure that I would go through college and undergrad, but then what happened next felt like really adulting, like Julie says. And then also Julie has like this really interesting perspective, which was almost a little triggering at times, but it was a good reminder where she went to law school and then I've did the typical big law grind after that I think so many people get drawn into. Yeah. And then had a big pivot moment. So it was good to, I'm hopefully going into it law school with the expectation that I won't get drawn into that world, but it was good to hear from Julie as I read the book that you can still pivot and change at all points of your career and life and of being an adulting.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. I think so many kids seem like you get like stuck, like thinking like whatever you choose right now, you're doing forever. And that is just not how life works. Like I'm still pivoting and like thinking of new things, And so anyway, so first of all, let me just back up a little bit. So I was so excited that I was privileged to get a early release copy of Julie Lythcott-Haims' brand new book that actually comes out today called Your Turn. And it's specifically written for young adults. I'm thinking, and I want to ask you, Emma, what age group you think is right. And so I have a huge book stack right now and was behind in my reading. And I thought it would be cool to have Emma read this first because she's a great reader and someone I really trust your opinion a lot. And thought, how about talking to someone who read the book from that age perspective rather than as a parent reading it and saying, oh, I think this would be great for my kids. So I asked Emma if she would be interested in reading it. And so she started reading it, I don't know, several weeks ago, a month ago. I don't remember when it was. So Emma, tell me about, first of all, just kind of your overall, you finished the whole book and it's a long book. Hold that thing up, show everybody. It's a long book. And I was a little worried because I do think that some people in your age group don't read that much. Am I correct in assuming that, or?
You are correct in assuming that. And I think also when people want to read, it's hard to push this kind of more self-helpy kind of book on them. They want to escape into fantasy a little more than confront the kinds of things this book brings up.
Right. So it could be good though. To me, it would be a great thing to read with a group of friends.
Yes.
And get together and talk about it.
And that's the urge I've had now. And this is your copy. And I was lucky to read it before it was officially out, but I've had the urge to hand it on to my housemates and say, tell me what you think. Similar to after I read Defining Decade, that kind of feeling of I wanted to discuss it with other people who had read it. And I felt the same way when I first saw it, oh, that's a long book. And in the beginning chapters, I was feeling Julie gives these awesome lists throughout the book of things, but they're 15-point lists a lot of the time. So I'm how is this going to work? But I think now that I have finished it, what I feel is so great about it, and this is actually one of the little blurbs on the back, I think says it so well, is that people always say, oh, there's no manual for life. There's no manual for adulting. And this kind of does a great job of getting as close to being that full manual as you can get. Every subject touches on kind of every aspect that you can think of in terms of transitioning from kind of being under your parents' wings to being on your own. So I think the sacrifice of readability is that it's really comprehensive. And I could see doesn't seem you can see my sticky notes and everything. It does seem like the kind of book where you might not be able to remember the 3 life-changing sentences, but instead when you're in a situation, you could say, oh, I should turn to that chapter or that chart. And so keep it on the bedstand or keep it on the bookshelf and return to it. Is kind of how I'm feeling about it now that I'm finished.
Oh my gosh, that is the hugest compliment for any author. So I know Julie will love to hear that, because you don't want someone to just read a book and say, oh yeah, I learned some stuff and put it down. I mean, I know when I wrote my book, I was I don't want people they don't even need to read the whole thing if they're just wanting to learn about one subject. So I think it's great the way you've just framed that. And I do think I want you to keep your own copy. I think we should get more copies for your friends. And I think it would be great if you and Charlotte and some of your peers did a little book club on it, and just talk about.
That'd be fun.
Maybe you could each host one of the topics or something. So what were some of the kind of topics that really resonated with you? You mentioned kind of talking about transitioning and career choices. What did you gain? I know I told you this via text before we talked, that I don't think you're necessarily the typical, you're 23, right?
Yep.
I feel like you have I feel like in terms of the trajectory of adulting. I think you have an emotional maturity that's really high for your age, and you're very intellectually curious and have already kind of pursued and done a lot of things for your age. So I wasn't sure if you were the best candidate for this book, but I'm so glad to hear that you even also gained from it. So what, well, why don't you just tell me, what are some of your takeaways that maybe have stood out to you the most, things that you feel like your friends need to hear?
Yes. Okay. So the first one is Julie kind of fights against the question that I think a lot of people are asked my age, especially like when we show up to like try and identify mentors or talk to, helpful professors or even therapists. Like they like to ask, what is your passion? And that is like I understand what they're getting at there, but that is always gives me such stress and anxiety. And also I feel like conflates too much pressure on that, like everything you do or your job you choose or how you make your money, like needs to be connected to your passion. And Julie has this awesome Venn diagram at one point. And it's like 3 circles. And it's like, I'm looking at it right now. What are you good at? What do you love? And how do you identify and where do you find belonging? And that you kind of got to place yourself at the center of that. And it doesn't need to be your career, your volunteer, your social circle. You just need to feel grounded there. And I don't know, I just liked that stuck with me of instead of asking myself, what is my passion in life? Which feels like too big of a question a lot of the times. Just what do I like? What am I good at? And then where do I find belonging?
Oh,
so I really liked that one.
Oh my gosh, that belonging thing in that community is so important.
Yeah. And
I mean, I just think that who you spend your time with and who, your peers and partners and just all of that, who you work with is so important in life, isn't it?
Yes. And that is something, she has a chapter on this as well and I wrote a little note for you in terms of camp and the parenting stuff, is she talks about like the skills that no one really teaches you and you hope that you pick up and learn as a kid, but how to keep relationships and like what that actually requires. And I think that's never been like laid out in writing in front of me. And maybe it is a little more in the parenting world, but just the tangible, like ask someone how they're doing today, ask what you can do to make their day a little better. When an old person tells you a story and you've heard the story 5 times and you're a little annoyed, just sit with it and be patient. And those kinds of little things that, as much as whatever you just said about my emotional intelligence and all that, like it's just a good reminder that some of the things that make us human are also not always inherently in all of us. And just being reminded that with practice comes, those skills become a little more natural if they're not natural at first. And so that if creating community isn't your strong set, if you're not an extrovert, if you're not the kind of person that is always reaching out to old acquaintances and building your network or whatever, that there's actually things you can do to wind up in the same successful community and friendships and relationships. So I really liked that was laid out. And, I have a lot of friends where I love them but that is not their skill set. And so I could imagine that being really helpful to those people, like, hey, it's okay if you haven't talked to someone in 6 months or 8 months or a year, just check in. That's what being a person
and how to
is.
do that. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Do that.
It's so funny as you were saying that. So Julie and I have gotten to be friends over this past year, which has been just like this huge fun blessing. We're in this group and we get to like just connect every couple of weeks very casually, not talking about parenting stuff, just kind of talking about life. And one of the things, she practices what she preaches. So I think it was like last spring, and I might get the dates wrong, but she started reaching out and reconnecting with good friends from her past. And she's so cute. She does like cool bulleting and stuff. And she was keeping track of when she talked to people and like just that whole like thing that I do think, honestly, Emma, one of the really sad things that often happens as adulthood is you get so busy with like your own life. And if you get married, with your family, and if you have kids, your kids, and just where you live, that you really can lose relationships. Or lose track of them, right, or not keep up with them. And it's really sad because I think, kids often, I don't know, and maybe I don't know, think that you probably feel this way, but I think a lot of times, there's so much focus on like who you get married to or who you choose to spend the rest of your life with, as if that one person is going to fulfill all of your relational needs and community needs. And that's so not true. Like, you need all these different, like, the richness of life is your friends and your family and the old people and the young people and all those people. So I love that she focuses on that, because I know she's living that out too, that kind of making sure she's staying connected even during COVID, just, with people.
Oh,
So that's beautiful.
That's fun. It's cool. Like, now that I've read this book, she feels like it's a celebrity to me. So it's fun that you have chatted with her and consider her a friend and all that, because she comes off as so wise, but also so grounded in her little comments. And like, when she throws in something sassy or like a little, like, there's a few like curse words thrown in there, and I'm like, this just seems like you're talking to someone that just gets it and is going to tell it how it is to you. So it's fun to hear.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, she's a very authentic person. And that's, the best writing is authentic to your voice. I don't know if you know that she also has an amazing memoir called Real American, which you really want to read. It's shorter. It's so good. It's about growing up, mixed race, it's so good. And she was doing some read alouds of it. So you would love that as well.
Oh, I got to add that to my list.
Yes. So I think what I'm going to do with your turn is listen to it. Like audio.
Aww.
I think, because she reads it. So I'll just listen to her reading it to me now, but the audio I'm sure is out now today too. Because I just know, when I'm like talking to counselors at camp, a lot of times I end up in these like kind of like life coaching discussions with people who just don't know what to do. So I know I'll get some good insights from her on that. And then even in my own family, everyone's always asking like, what do I do? And it's really hard. Right. And there's not necessarily going to be this like one thing that's going to like be exactly right. And part of it is too, like the experimentation, like you got to try some different things. Like, how are you supposed to find what you love doing if you haven't done very many things? Right.
Right. And those were like kind of the questions that I had left after reading the book, is like, and checking my own privilege of being like, well, I have been privileged to feel a little bit secure about like that Venn diagram of what I'm good at, what I like. But, as I look at my peers and some of my friends, I'm like, that is a privilege in and of itself that I've gotten to explore things like that. And I just wonder how someone that's just been on a school work grind their whole life gets there.
So true. Like, you've got to step back sometimes, right? And evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So before we started recording, you told me that some of your favorite chapters were towards the end. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of those topics that really resonated with you?
Yeah. So the first one, and this I think is really related to my field of study and my own goals and maybe my insecurities too, but she has a chapter called Make Things Better, which is kind of about, being a change maker and not getting too wrapped up in the big picture, right? Like don't do nothing just because you can't do everything. And that was like the biggest reminder for me of that, just little things. Like, she gives a little list, and it's like, read the news, choose things that you're passionate about, talk about them with others. And that was just, it felt validating because, studying agriculture and wanting to go to law school to like change the world in some way I think I get overwhelmed. And when I go into the other space where I just feel like, no, I don't want to do any of that. I just want to have a job where I get my paycheck and then I go do what I want on the weekends. And I think that kind of like fighting it out comes from the overwhelming feeling that I won't be able to accomplish everything I want to do. So I just liked the reminder that it kind of comes back to like that same Venn diagram of like, choose what is necessary to make it feel like enough. And it doesn't have to be that much. And it's everyone's little actions that add up. And the reality is, she has this great example of how she felt really passionate about children and families stuck at the border. And like, one day she finally decided, I've been thinking and talking about this for so long, I'm going to go down there. And she organized and got people down there, and they were protesting and had signs. And she talks about how like that was a good eventful day in her life, but also just about how the lead up to it and the interaction she had with people at shops on her way when she told what she was doing, like the connection they felt to her and the gratitude they expressed, that filled her up too. So while in reality it was like not that big of a thing, you know, it was like 48 hours out of her life. It filled her up in a way where then she could have a full cup and move on to the next thing. So I liked that just reminder, I think, because of where I am in life. And then I think the best chapter is the Unleash Your Superpowers chapter, which talks about mindfulness, kindness, and gratitude, like as your superpowers. And she makes the point, which may seem obvious, but I don't think it's that obvious, that these are things that everyone has regardless of their circumstances, right? You can be mindful, kind, and grateful no matter what's happening in your life. And well, I'm skeptical of the whole mindfulness thing, which she teases people about, because it's a big process to like truly have mindfulness come naturally. I think that the kindness and gratitude are things that I can implement right now in my everyday life to make me feel better about everything I do. And again, it's kind of like the social interaction stuff. No one like teaches you in school, like just express gratitude. And I think it's become more like trendy now in terms of like gratitude journaling and all of that. But it makes you feel good, and like the science is there, and it changes the framing. And so I just like that she lays that out, because I assume, you know, I feel lucky that I went to camp and that I have great parents and other adult role models that tell me these things. But I assume there's a lot of people where no one says, like, just express 3 things you're grateful for and you're going to feel a lot better today. So I just like that ending and how she wrapped it up, that the 3 things that are your superpowers have nothing to do with your accomplishments or your skill sets or the money you have or the job you have. And I love that.
Oh, that's so
it's sappy,
beautiful.
but it's true.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, it's really is true. I know there's so many examples of that just showing a little kindness to other people can be so huge. She shared something on I think it was on her Instagram a few days ago, that talks about like what part of a person's story you actually see, and how here's this person's whole life and you see this tiny bit. And I don't know if that was from her book or something else, but it really resonated with me because, well, this is just a total side story that as I get on a tangent, as I always do. So someone we both know and love was in line to get a COVID vaccine last week. And she is in her late 30s and has had some health problems for more than 3 years, and is a childcare worker because of camp. And somebody in the pharmacy started like taunting her about being too young to be getting the vaccine.
Oh.
And it was just such a weird, like, I wasn't there, but I was just like, my heart was just like, this person, like, to on purpose, like, maybe even if you're thinking something and thinking, oh, that person looks awfully young, you know, to be getting their vaccine. First of all, you don't say it out loud. You can just smile and walk by and be polite. You don't even know the person, and you certainly don't know their story. And I just thought, like, wow, just the world needs more love and kindness. Seriously, people, like, that is not okay. So just, again, that whole story thing. And I think that same day, Julie posted that thing, and I'm just like, yes, woman in the pharmacy, you do not even have any idea of what the person that you were just like shaming, we called it vax shaming, like she called it, is what was in her
that
text, is like, no, you don't know anyone's story. You don't know anyone's health history. You don't know anything about people. So please, people, just be kind. And I think we're just in a time, and I'm so glad that Julie, that's a big part of her message in the book, because boy, people like, especially they say that like social media and the way things are fed to us have just made us get like further and further apart. And it doesn't matter if like you're interacting with someone who is like opposite in every way from you, politically, racially, whatever, age. I mean, anything that you can say. It is just like, why would you not choose just to be kind?
Right. It's especially like for the vax shamer. It's like, why is she like, I'm just thinking about how she must be feeling after coming out of that reaction too. Like, what is wrong with the world that is what she wants to put onto herself, like anger and resentment towards this awesome person who's trying to keep themselves healthy and safe and is already feeling really vulnerable, probably out in a pharmacy getting a new medicine shot into her arm. Like, how sad that this random person is feeling some way in their body and with their experience that they need to shame someone.
Right.
And it's just going to continue their cycle of being mean.
Right. Well, and that is how it works, right? So if your generation is the one who learns, right, about kindness and just being kind to like all people, then you can change that cycle, because oftentimes people who are, negative, mean, abusive to others, that's how they were treated, right? Somebody along the way, somebody did that to them. And then it's like this cycle. So we've got to break the cycle with that, just that kindness. Okay. What else do you want to share about just like encouraging like other people your age? What are some of the other reasons why they need to get a copy of this book? And parents or loved ones, this is a great gift for like upcoming graduations, don't you think?
Yes, I think that is like what you talked about with your own family too. And I can attest to this with my own parents and family, is these things that I'm saying were never told to me. They probably were told to me by someone who I wasn't going to listen to. So I think that is a good plug to send this to your loved one. If there's things that you want to say, and maybe it's cliche, hand the book instead of having the conversation, but it works. And I think it's so easy to trust Julie as an authority that you also feel like, I feel like I know her. I feel like she knows me, and she has my best, she has the best intentions and wants me to succeed. So I think that she felt like a good authority to listen to in ways that I wouldn't listen to my own parents telling me these things. I think that I wouldn't give the book to someone, and I put little notes in this. You got to give it to someone who is kind of at that threshold, which I feel like myself and a lot of my friends are, where we want to adult and be adulting, but we don't know where to draw the line and that kind of thing. I wouldn't give it necessarily to someone who is like, that push isn't there yet. Like, I think it is more of a finishing college in your first job kind of book, because I was thinking about if I would have been ready for this 3 or 4 years ago, or even 2 years ago. And I think the answer is no, because I wasn't ready to leave my parents' wings. I really liked that comfort. And I think this would have been scary at that point. So not a high school graduation book, but definitely college. And I just think to anyone thinking about reading it or wanting to read it, it's interesting because, I'm in therapy and I'm happy I had my therapy this morning and I love it and it feels good. But I also think I have a lot of friends who are experimenting with it and really I feel like this book could save them a few sessions with just getting an objective opinion of what to do. As crazy as that sounds, but when she talks about, Julie has a chapter about getting unstuck, which I think is the best title. It's what so many of us feel but don't know how to express, which is just we're in this weird limbo, don't know what to do next, maybe have an idea of where we want to be 5 or 10 years out, but don't know how to get unstuck to get there. So I just kind of liked that. I feel like for anyone that is feeling a bunch of weird young adult feelings and don't know the words to put to them, Julie does such a great job of giving the vocabulary and words of you're stuck right now a little bit, and this is what you need to do to get unstuck. And then just the only other thing that I would say, a little highlight from it, or something that I'll remember and take with me. And she shared it from a TEDx talk, I think, and I can't remember who, but I thought this was also cute for camp. And it was about shining your flashlight and how you can shine your flashlight on the parts of life that you want to see and choose not to shine it on the parts of life you don't want to see, and maybe widen your flashlight when it's necessary and close it up when it's not. And I'm constantly choosing between I'm always in that battle between losing the forest for the trees or getting too wrapped up in the trees and missing the forest. So I just liked that analogy, and I've been carrying that with me the past few days, and thinking about how that's a cute thing for camp, the little flashlight metaphor.
Oh my gosh, so good. I'm stealing that for sure. It's so good. I know, gosh, as you're talking to them, I'm just thinking, what's funny is, many people who are adults, like kids your age, probably look at people in their 50s and 60s and think, oh, well, they're an adult. They know what they're doing. So many adults never learn these things. You know what I mean? So many people in the world haven't learned these lessons. So honestly, I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like, okay, I'm excited for this update. Like I feel stuck sometimes right now, and like transitioning from COVID to like, just kind of trying to figure out what to put back into my life versus what things it's time to let go. I mean, I'm at like a different stage of life from you, but even I feel like so many of that, like I could use a Julie therapy session, reading a few chapters of her book to get me unstuck sometimes. So, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this, Emma. Okay. Well, I think we should follow up with, I know she probably has a really cool like discussion guide and stuff. I want you to like, if you, and maybe you and Charlotte could get some friends together and just book club this.
That would be so fun.
And then you guys can have
my second. I was just saying my second read listening to Julie, I think would be so fun too.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I like, as soon as we're done, I'm downloading it and going to start listening. As I drive into the office this afternoon, I'm going to start listening because I'm just so excited for this. And I just feel so many of the young adults that I see at camp, they have that experience where they love working at camp so much. And then they kind of are stuck that they think that's the only place where they can have that feeling. And, and our goal is always to help people figure out how to create that in all the different places. And it seems like this book is going to be a great tool for so many of you.
Definitely. And I think it's funny how like when you first handed me this a month ago and I was like 3 chapters in, I was kind of like, oh, this is dense, this is big. And now I'm like, that's what's so great about it. It covers all those things.
Yeah. Well, you keep that copy. You keep that copy with all your sticky notes. Don't give it away. That's your resource.
Thank you.
Let's get some more copies for everybody else.
Yes.
We'll do that. Okay, Emma, this has been so great. You can always review my young adult books anytime you want.
Thank you.
I mean, this isn't a young adult. That's I don't know what the name of this is. I don't think there's many books of this genre. The only other ones that I know you guys have talked about is The Defining Decade. And there's maybe some books about like dating. I don't really know what else would, besides those that have really been written for you.
Right. That is a really good point. And it almost makes me also want to read her parenting book to just see like, I don't know. I just think that'd be interesting too, how that factors in and to all of us.
100%. Yeah. Oh no, you need to read it before if you decide to have kids, like before you do, read that book, because it's all the things that you need to know about how we hamper our kids kind of inadvertently. Like we always like love our kids, but we all as parents do things that don't help with the future adulting. Right. You know what I mean? And so she's really focused on in How to Raise an Adult. It's like, just again, those basic skills that sometimes parents forget that, wow, your kid's going to turn 18 and they're not going to naturally have the ability to like open a can unless at some point someone has shown them how to use a can opener. All those things. And it's weird. We're living in a time where like, and we don't have to go on to this other book, but it's like where kids like often are choosing not to get their driver's license because it's easier to just like let a parent drive you around. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like when I was a kid, I was like, I cannot wait to drive and be free, like get to be able to drive away. And it's just a weird era for kids and for parents that many of us were raised with a lot of independence, right? Maybe perhaps too much, not a lot of supervision. I mean, think about it. No cell phones, no nothing. And then it was this huge flip. And so I think your generation, and even now, I'm sure people are really getting the message that it needs to swing back towards a sanity, like talking to your kids about things, but also letting them try some things, letting them fail at stuff, letting them figure out how to learn how to drive.
and that was my
things like that.
When I have that note on a few pages, and it's not, I think, your intention and who this book is intended for, but I have my note in a lot of places of like, well, what if, like, and I'm thinking of certain people in my head, well, what if they don't want to adult? You know, like step 1 on her list of adulting is decide you want to adult. And I have a lot of people in my life who have not reached that point yet at 22, 23, 24. And that's kind of scary.
Well, yeah. And here's the thing. I mean, I always talk about that. I often will say to people, if you were able to delegate all your worry, all your chores, anything that, you know, any task to someone else,
that is
why not just keep doing it? So when you think about, no, I mean, if you think about, like, if there's a 25-year-old who has managed to, you know, have their parents like pay their rent every month, make their food, find a job for them to do, you know, you could just go on the list. Like, what motivation does anyone have to do anything when it's so easy just to like let other people do it? So I actually think a lot of kids are super brilliant that they can like sit there on the couch and be like, Mom, I'm really hungry. Can you get me a snack? You know, and like, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like funny to me how many kids have kind of mastered that with parents, right? And it doesn't help them. That's the problem, because you don't feel good on the inside, right? You get to that point, like you might feel comfortable, but you're not really like living out any purpose or figuring out, you know, where you want to go or anything. You're just kind of like,
And
so anyway,
that is interesting to think about too. And you're right. That probably comes to the parenting side of things.
Well, and here's the other thing, and I'm just, of course, going on my soapbox now when we're talking so long, but the other thing that I think is really important has been really like something that has really kind of helped me as I frame like the whole idea of like being an individual and being a parent and life and everything is I need to have my own life. Like my life cannot be defined by my children.
Right.
Because they are meant to go on and define their own life, right?
Right.
So if I spend my every waking minute just thinking about helping, trying to, you know, make their lives better, which is what you kind of do when they're really little, you know, that's kind of what you do. But I think it's just sad. And then you see some parents where like their youngest child graduates from high school and goes off to college and they're just bereft.
Right.
And even though they were complaining about driving everywhere and all that stuff, they're like, oh, wait, I forgot along the way to keep in touch with my friends, to have a hobby, to read books, you know, all that stuff. So I think it's great to think about it now, right? Regardless of what you do with your life, to think about, you know, what kind of parent do you want to eventually be? And, you know, to me, the best kind of parent is one that shows kids that adulthood can be awesome.
That is such a positive gold standard to have. I thought you were going to say like shows them how to do things, but doesn't do it for them. No, just shows them that it's growing up can be fun. And that life is worth doing to its fullest and living your best life while you can. Yeah, that's awesome.
Totally. And that you still have friends and you do stuff with them when you're, you know, in your 50s and 60s and 70s and whatever. And you go on trips and you do stuff and like you live and you're not just sitting around waiting for the kids to come home.
Right. Well, that's like all these young adults she talks to that are in conflict of like choosing the right career and the money-making career and being happy. And I'm like, why are we in that dilemma? It's because for a lot of the time, that's what's modeled to us. And so hopefully, you know, we can, after years of all these people asking us, what are our passions? Who knows what that'll turn to, but maybe it will turn to us at least choosing to stay involved with things like you just said that make us happy and fulfilled in ways beyond a paycheck and in ways beyond just your duties, your everyday duties.
Totally. And sometimes it ends up being just an amazing hobby and fun thing that you can do your whole life. And sometimes those random things weirdly turn into a career. Right. Do you know what I mean? You just don't know for sure. But I mean, I just think I have so many like young people that I've known over the years who've gone on to do really kind of like who would have thought that was a job? I mean, hello, my job is one of those jobs, right?
Yes.
Like, I didn't know that it was a job, and nobody would have told me about it. And I certainly would never have said that this is my dream.
Right.
Right. But
So
I fell into it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't care that no one thinks my job is like whatever the definition of like success might be from whoever those people are, that nobody really knows who these people are that we're thinking of out there in the world. But it's like, who cares? You're living your life, right? You're just like on the inside. Who are you? Okay. Well, I just want to talk to you some more. We'll have to do a recap again.
Yes.
Maybe I'm having Julie on in a couple of weeks. I'm so excited. We're going to be talking to her. And if you have some more questions for her or anything that you want me to ask her, let me know, and we'll add that to that chat too.
Okay. This is so fun. Thanks for sharing the book with me.
Let's do it again.
I'll be a reader anytime.
Okay. Every time I have a book, I'm sending it to you.
I'm ready.
Thanks for being on, Emma. You're awesome. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. See you soon, hopefully.
Okay, bye.
As always, you can find notes, links, and other resources related to today's conversation by visiting my website at sunshine-parenting.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for my email list so that you don't miss out on any of the great resources I have available for raising thriving kids. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate you sharing it with a friend. Please take a moment to give Sunshine Parenting a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Let's end with a quote from my book, Happy Campers. Regardless of the age of your kids or where you and your family currently are on the kindness meter, kindness is something that you can promote and grow at home. And the resulting positive changes in your kids will be well worth the effort. Kindness makes us happier, healthier, better people. I'm Audrey Monkey. Thank you for joining me for the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. Join me again for more conversations about raising kids who become thriving adults.